Go.
Welcome to the Community Difference, North Texas, powered by the Business Development Alliance, where we're changing the dynamic that has too many business owners feeling like they're working for their government instead of the other way around. Every first Wednesday at 11:30 a.m., host Brian Poduska and co-host Lyndon Wilson bring you the mayors, council members, and officials making decisions that affect your business, so you can meet them, understand the issues, and engage before those decisions get made. In today's episode, you'll discover why business owner turnout stays so low in local elections, and what that silence is costing you in policy decisions you never see coming. Our guest pulls back the curtain on the real barriers keeping business owners disengaged, and more importantly, the strategic moves that change the game when you finally understand how it's played. The Community Difference is powered by the Business Development Alliance, uniting over 600 small to mid-sized business owners across North Texas into a voice that's respected, included, and becoming indispensable to leaders building stronger communities. Now, getting today's conversation started, your host, Brian Poduska.
Wow. It's also evolved to a program where, and I'll have Lennon up at the end to talk about this, but getting business owners together to save money so you can reallocate your expenses to building a business. There's a pretty cool tool that's been involved that Lennon created, and it's evolved from all the things we've done together. So I'll bring Lennon up at the end to talk about that. What I want to do, we have a special guest with us today who will be hosting our next event, the happy hour. So I'm going to bring Lauren Hill, who's a member of the Business Development Alliance, up to introduce Mr. Lee. Give it up for Lauren.
Good morning, I'm Lauren Gill. I'm the Travel Experience Specialist, and it is my pleasure to bring Randy up here to introduce himself and share a little bit about Randy's Statehouse. He opened in downtown Frisco, what's now known as the Rail District, in 1993. I actually had my college graduation dinner at his restaurant in 1991. So don't do the math. I think it was I think about Randy's Statehouse. We're super excited to host our inaugural BDA happy hour there next Tuesday evening. You can see the details up on the screen. And I will turn it over to Brian to interview Randy, and so you can learn more about him and the Statehouse.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, Randy, so we're just going to spend a couple minutes here. If you live in Frisco or you know anything about Frisco, you probably know about Randy's restaurant. So when did you open?
Well, I actually bought the house in 1991. I opened in 1993. I bought the house, I was 20 years old. I bought it in Vivian McCown. It's $750,000. Everybody thinks I'm crazy because I'm a tax law. I've worked out.
So anybody who doesn't believe the real estate has value, I believe right now. Now that's awesome, and like Lauren mentioned, Randy's is a staple for a lot of families in the area, not just in Frisco. And you've had great success over the years. As we know, the Rail District, and anybody who in here today knows, we're still under a little bit of construction. So the Rail District construction has happened over the last 2 years, greatly impacting your business. Tell us a little bit about those struggles.
So we've been in business now for 33 years. So mostly it's been awesome. So we've had a lot of success. The last 2 years, it's been a really rough 2 years. Business with the road construction is 60%. So it's been picked up in like 4 weeks. And you asked the question, it's kind of hard to know right now because we had a really big weekend and we had the freeze and we had another big weekend. So we had Valentine's. There's no consistency yet to know what's going to happen. But I don't expect things to pick up. It should be like, you got to get the word out. You know, you don't go to business, right? So it takes time to get things back. It's been rough, but I think this is my year. And I hope so.
So this is being live streamed and recorded, so that would be a good one-liner. Throw out there.
Already.
Get down the radio. Well, and thank you for sharing that. Your struggles have been shared by pretty much everybody on Main Street. The city has done some things to try to prop that out. and that's debatable whether or not it was enough. We've done some grassroots stuff. You've been on our podcast. You know, you've had some articles that have been published, and the word on the street is Randy's has been full more recently in the last couple of months. Yep, Randy's has been fuller. So Randy's full. So the reason we wanted you up here, one, we're having a happy hour at your place, want to support you and your business, but also want to remind people to get out to Randy's, hopefully continue the positive momentum that, you know, we've tried to generate from the grassroots.
We've been around actually for years. It's been a great run, for sure. And we got a ways to go. I'm old now, so I'm 62 years old, and I'm actually leaning towards retirement. I'm old. My wife is 67, so we're like, but we have a 5 years. And things have been great. So, we've had great support. Frisco has been a great place to do business. For the 33 years, it's been so long. The road construction is a bit of a challenge. People stop. I don't think they really stopped coming to see me as much as they stopped. We went to road construction a couple years ago, and we were at that time, we went to find Statehouse. Closest you had to go was down. Now it's 5 Statehouse just in Frisco. So there's not there's a lot of this. So I don't think there's anything personal, but it's done. Now it's time to get things back and so and I think it's already happening. We'll see for sure. But things have been great. We have wine dinner coming up February 26th, I think it's last Thursday. It's a Mardi Gras game on a tuxedo to support this. Yeah. Oh, I was so excited. I shouldn't have my clothes. But a really big event. And then we're doing an event, so one of the great things that came out was the downtown people. So Scott and BD's and Derek with 811 and we got heritage things. But we're all doing a press dinner. And so yeah, so we're trying to do things together to bring business down and promote downtown. Love us.
Yeah, love the unity that's come out of that. Again, that's kind of what we're trying to do here. Let's all start by showing up at Ray's next week for the happy hour. And we appreciate you being here today.
Well, I appreciate you. Bye. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in. All right, with that, again, appreciate you, Randy, and this is our first official happy hour. So bring anybody to come and meet and learn more about the BDA and just meet community leaders. That is the whole goal. Okay, with that, let's bring up our special guest and we'll do our panel. So every month, like I said, we do a panel discussion where we highlight community leaders. So let's get our state representatives up here, and we're going to talk a little bit of fun, but mostly about how, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we can get involved and impact policy ahead of when it impacts us. So that is the whole goal here. First of all, let's give it up to these guys. We are truly on stage. All right, well, first of all, it's campaign season. So I want to first recognize the time that you're spending with us is extremely valued. So thank you so much for spending the time today. In this busy time, the busiest of times for you guys. We do a podcast, as I mentioned, and I'd like to kick it off with a fun question. So we're gonna get to know you a little bit first, and then we'll get into some of the business side questions. So what I'd like you guys to do is just introduce yourselves, who you are, what your role is with the state. And then the fun questions, since the Olympics are on right now, what's your favorite Winter Olympic sport? Doesn't necessarily need to be one that you're good at. Maybe one that you want to be good at, but what's your favorite sport in the Winter Olympics? So here, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. My name is Jared. I'm for District 106, which means I'm continuing. I'll tell you where that is. So that starts kind of the South Carolina landscape. Literally the southernmost point is Shields and Gaza. And it comes all the way up to the colony, in Texas, which pretty much have everything north of 380 to the county line, Grayson and Cook, all the way around Interstate 35. It's Denton, Bronx Village, Hollow Point, Greenville, Aubrey, and just the Denton County side. And been in the house. My favorite Winter Olympics sport, but what's the one where it looks, they fill little things, they sweep.
Curling.
I think that a lot, like sometimes we're, out there and on TV and thinking, that might be, I can sweep.
So you're a native Texan, is that right? Okay, so I grew up in North Chicago, and I've never curled in my life, but at least I've seen it before. And I have to admit, I'm a hockey guy, right? So hockey's one of my favorite sports in general, let alone in the Olympics. But I tell you what, curling sneaking up is, we went over to.
That's a lot of curling, but it's have to show you. Famous sport. Has anyone watched the curling?
Well, so if you're up north and it's cold, it's kind of like throwing bags, but it's on ice that you can drink beer and I think that's where it started.
So it's great to be with y'all. Thanks for having all of us. I'm Shaheen, and I've been in the Texas House since 2015. I'm married to my wife, Robin. We have 3 awesome children. 4 plus us with Celia, Abby, and Sam. And my district is next door to Jared, so I've got a plan over to go across from some line up the Palm County. Been real blessed and love serving. We're so blessed with the state of Texas. And so the sport I like is manly sport, downhill skiing. We just took a family trip skiing, and I busted it twice. I'm 60 now, and I think I'm 30 when I'm going down the track. And I proved myself wrong twice. It kind of hurts, and I'm gonna fall. Anyhow.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mihaela, Plesa, and I chair a border district with Chairman Shaheen in Collin County. It's less strict than maybe, but I represent Southwest Collin County. Most of my district is the city of Plano. I have all the way to the county line. I have all the way down to the Southern County line to Dallas County, and then up to 121. So, Allen, a little bit of Richardson, a whole lot of fun. I was elected in 2022, so I'm the newest here. But I'm working quite hard because I'm the only Democrat elected in Collin County. But really glad I serve the vice chair of pensions, investments, and financial services. So it's a really important committee, and enjoying my time in the legislature. But to answer your question. Oh, and Olympics. Okay, so the one that I think I would be the best at is snowboarding. I really enjoy snowboarding, but it's always like you have time to snowboard like right before. So I'm really nervous. I'm gonna end up, showing up on crushes. The one that I really have been enjoying watching is the speed skating, especially the group speed skating. It is really cool to watch how precise and neat they are. Like being in the legislature, you gotta get
Once you find it that way, right? Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate that. Before we dive into some of the business questions, I do want to ask you this because the kind of a transition, right? You guys, what do you do for a day job? How do you make a living? Because I think you get paid a little bit for being for the roles that you have, but if you break that down per hour basis, it's probably not very good. So, what do you do on a day-to-day basis for a living? And two, how do you balance that with the families that you mentioned and the legislature? We'll go say more.
Yeah, so, we are the legislature, we are representatives, but we are not in Washington DC, right? They get paid, I don't even know, maybe 170. So, that's not broken result inside. So, that's not, okay, we get paid $600 a month to be a state representative. And in fact, after they take everything out of the check, they have to take out the check. I have to write them a check for almost $3,000 a year just to be an employee of the state. So this is not a money-making venture, I can assure you, especially when you consider the opportunity costs related to it. My day job is I am contracts in the deregulated market, where folks have a choice, not co-serve, not city but in the deregulated market, mainly for manufacturers and large commercial dealers. And they do that for over 20 years now. Market. I tell my kids all the time that I work in an industry that did not exist when I was absolutely correct. That market was not deregulated in Texas. So you never know which class you're going to need. Speaking of family, you're absolutely right. It is balanced. My oldest boy is a freshman, my youngest is in the 5th grade, and so we've got 3 different schools here in Frisco, and it's a challenge, because you have the full-time job, you got another full-time job, even though you're in Austin for 5 months plus special sections. And then you basically have another full-time job, which is campaigning and being out of your district. So I used to fish. I don't do that anymore. And that's also I could recall the name of the sport. So the West Wing is on Netflix. I actually runs there in the evenings when I can't sleep. Other than that, it's difficult, but we make it. My wife is sustained, and it's really you just can't do this on your own. There's just no way.
Well, and that leads me to my next question, which I'll ask you guys as well. What inspired you for that insanity? Right? So I say that jokingly, but there is a level of insanity needed to because it does take up so much of your time. So what inspired you to public service?
It's not just personally, it's nothing that I ever planned on. I was raised, I grew up in Virginia, rural Virginia, about it. My mom and dad raised me. They told us, the Lord has given you gifts and talents. You're supposed to use those, where's your family and career, all those things. But you're also supposed to serve others. And I just always have these memories of, through our church, we would minister to the needy. I remember I finished with my dad and serving food to the homeless, and I was just always brought up that way. We've been brought up with a service heart, and Jared really articulated it very well. I mean, you really have to be pretty stupid to be in the Texas legislature. You take it and I do technology consulting about this issue. So I probably had a more job up here, but it really is a blessing it's one thing I'll leave you with is 2 things. One is the fact that we only meet every 2 years, and the fact that we're volunteers. I think the secret sauce in the state of Texas. It's difficult to be in the legislature. I don't know how many of y'all have actually been down there. On the floor of the House, there's these composites, pictures of all the members, all 100. And I go to the composite of my freshman year, and well over half always this debate about term limits and all that. It's just, it really is difficult. And because it's difficult, people don't serve in the legislature. That really is, I think, the special sauce of why Texas is doing so well economically. We're just so blessed because we don't need not passing much student bills, we're not raising taxes or anything like that. And it's hard, also hard to pass legislation. There are probably, the numbers vary in sessions, but it's like 7,000 or 8,000 bills that are filed. Oftentimes less than 1,000 actually come off. So you have 8,000 filed. That's also.
Yeah, so, my story is a little bit different. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My family immigrated here in the 1970s from a country called Romania in Eastern Europe. And Shaheen actually was my state representative for a really, really long time. And, after college, I believed in the American dream and I started a small business. I was a small business owner in fashion merchandising and design, so I ran a clothing company, right up to 35. Back before like Spanx and Lululemon was the thing, 26 years ago, we went into a bank and asked for a small business loan to make, shapewear and swimwear that actually fit women and we felt comfortable in. And so I did that for about, a decade and realized, math wasn't really what I was doing. Should be voting. But I never, thought, oh my God, I'm going to run for office, right? I was like, I'm just a small business owner, daughter of immigrants. No, that's not exciting. So what I did was I sold my business and went down to the legislature and worked as a doctor for 7 years before I decided to run for office. Because I wanted to not just get elected, I wanted to actually be effective once I got down there, right? I wanted to understand how a bill became a law more than like school. And so my journey was a little bit different. I ran in a super competitive district, and it forced me to start having really, hard conversations with constituents. That's the foundation of how I legislate, right? I want to bring the district down to Austin and really bring the policies that I hear from I am in that really competitive district. I have to walk words and kind of focus on those things. So kind of what I did and why I'm doing it now.
Love that story. That's awesome. And great to have your inspiration for getting into politics sitting right next to you. Jared, just circle back since I didn't ask you originally, but what inspired you to first get into politics?
Yeah, I grew up so while we used to be in Whitesburg, it used to be a first district. Really up until I was a junior in high school, we still played this year. We started in high school. And so I played all these little towns and sports growing up, and we always kind of wanted to get back here. Teacher for 38 years, my dad was on the school board and letter carrier in social service. So we're a blue collar home, and it's still in us, hard work, service, get back to the community. But I have to say that the real reason I'm sitting here is my freshman year of college. You're trying to figure out what we're going to do to live. The United States was attacked. So that was in September of your freshman year, right at the beginning. I'll never forget, where I was that day, seeing it on the little TV up in front of the gas station when we had gone to get breakfast in the first class that week, and seeing the attack on our country and the aftermath, just keeping up with current events and all that, and talking to my parents and having tough conversations about serve. And so really it was the event of 9/11 that really kind of pushed me down this road and wanted to get back to public service.
Love it. All right. Thank you guys for sharing that background. Always great to hear that because, like I said, there is a level of insanity, and I mean that in a good way. Getting out that campaign trail we'll trade out, we'll, try this one. Yeah, that's much better. So, again, the reason we brought you guys here is really to connect and educate small teams as business owners on, how they can get involved and really get ahead of some of the legislature, get involved early, so they're not reacting as much, or at least be aware so they can react appropriately and plan, right? So first question I'm gonna ask you guys, policy is often described as something that happens to small business owners rather than for them. In your experience, at what point in the legislative process can a small business owner's voice actually change an outcome? And what does that engagement need to look like? Mihaela, let's start with you. Since you are the small business owner,
Well, I would just say, it's really important to engage early and often. Like now, we're doing interim charges right now in the legislature, even though we're not down in Austin, we are still working, right? So, we're asking our chairman, we have two chairmen up here, to look into things, for our district. And so my encouragement would be to you guys, find out who the chair people are, in the Texas House and in the Texas Senate, and contact them now about the issues that are concerning you, affecting your small business. Don't just show up in our offices like on your long day, right? That's great, that's a great first start, but you really need to know and understand what is your business dealing with, and then the more stories we hear, it turns into, oh, this is systemic. This isn't just happening in HD70, Chairman Patterson's district and Chairman Shaheen's district. So then we can start coordinating and we can figure out, okay, how do we work on actual solutions, right? A lot of these are great, but we said before, it's only 140 days every 2 years. It's not a lot of time to get a whole lot of work done. So start who your member is, reach out to them, ask for that meeting, find out who the chair people are, committees that are of interest to you. And if you can't get a meeting with the state rep, our staff are vital. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know what I would do if I didn't have my staff, because they're the ones talking to people, doing the background research and briefing me on everything. So if you can't get to us, build that relationship.
Yeah, I think we have the right, we should start now. A lot of the topics that we have to deal with are incredibly complex. We have to deal with, it's just a gamut, right? It's criminal justice, it's education, it's utilities, it's water, it's roads, it's broad spectrum. And we really need to hear from you. It's really true, we really heard it, that like a lot of our best ideas for legislation comes from our constituents. And so there's just a really incredibly complex thing. There's probably this image that people think, you come up with Bill idea and it's bring DC for 5 minutes, type up a bill with a file. And because of the complex natures of some of these issues, we are already working on crafting legislation. How do we protect children from artificial intelligence and all the harmful things you're probably reading about? But how do you do that in such a way where hurt innovation with artificial intelligence? Jared was kind enough to help me with the utility industry when we were state was hit several years ago by freeze. The committee I served on dealt with those kinds of issues, right? And the utility industry, it's second nature with Jared. I think I need to flip on the switch and lights turn on my house. Then I got a bill from the month, right? That was the utility industry knowledge. So anyhow, the earlier you can get to us, the better. We're pretty acceptable. I mean, like a state senator represents close to 1 million people. Your U.S. Congressman probably represents close to 800,000. And we represent maybe a little bit over 200,000. So, yeah, there's times when our staff probably those persons talking, fairly accessible. I get text messages during session. People aren't happy with the way
Yeah, I don't really have a lot in that. Than to say, there are times when we're sitting on the house and I will literally get a call or a text from a constituent, who is aware of what's going on and tells me, how something and that, and it may change my vote. As they said early and often, getting with us not just one time. I think we all, look, you heard each one of our right? Like, we don't know everything about everything, but we're voting on policies, and we try to find people that's mentioning, my expertise is utilities. I have a tech question, ask him. We have a literal brain surgeon in the house, so I may go ask him something about healthcare, how it relates to him. So we do try to find those experts, but I think you may be surprised at just how often those experts are just the people in our district, folks that we know that work in an industry, and we can say, hey, this bill's coming up, how will this affect you? Now, that requires a level of engagement on your part as well. And so I think, finding the right industry group, whatever industry that you're in that can help you, or the Fiscal Chamber of Commerce, I know does a really good job of tracking a lot of things for their members. And so it does require some engagement on your part, but that gives us everything. I think, the three of us especially, and I think most of the body is this way, we desperately want to represent you and your family to the government, without those conversations, all kind of lost. And then, there's unintended consequences that happen in legislation all the time. Part of those interim charges we're talking about, we're going to go back and fix legislation that we passed last session, maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago. We didn't realize that we did take consequences. So that happens too. But yeah, early often we in our office come down and visit, please, a couple of different times. If I'm a constituent in the office, I say, put me on a committee to bring me out to the lobbyist doesn't get the same, necessarily. So it's very, very important whenever our folks that we represent come to us.
Awesome, kind of taking it down to the next level, right? So get involved early and often is what I just heard. So let's bring this to the next level. We come to you guys with issues. You hear the same underlying theme across maybe several different communities. And when you're evaluating whether to support a piece of legislation or bring that idea into legislation, what would you want a business owner in your district to bring to you? So data examples, right? Like data, stories, numbers, constituent numbers. What actually moves the needle for you guys?
Probably no different than how you look at things. You might need to do some explaining upfront, but the data around the issue, and if you could just help us understand the issue with respect to if there's a specific legislation that's for like a committee or we will probably need help understanding how that's going to impact your business beyond tax increase. It just happens constantly. And look, I can't imagine the diverse businesses that are represented here. And all your businesses are probably impacted differently. And so, just the facts and maybe help us understand the specific implications of recent legislation. Look, at the end of the day, we desperately want you to be successful. If we always brag about the state of Texas and how awesome everything is. We got a great future in front of us and a great opportunity. But it is our small businesses. If you look at the data and everybody makes the news with the big company, we get excited about that, obviously. But if you look at the data and look at the job creation and the employers, it's small business.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think, when we're talking about data, you really have to, kind of like the term in Patterson said, we might know a little bit about a lot. You know a lot about your specific industry, right? So we would need stuff like how does it affect your payroll? How does it affect your workforce? The story about the transportation difficulties around the Statehouse. These really specific things help us kind of not only make our decisions on how we're going to vote, but for
articulate to the other members on the floor, hey, what do you think this bill is gonna do? There's these loopholes, or there's this language in here that is gonna make it difficult for this industry or that industry. Specifically, like in committees like pensions, right, where we're really looking at like fees and how fees are impacting businesses, how they're impacting the bottom line, right? So I guess in general, I would just say, you know, come in and say like, hey, on a Tuesday morning, this is what my business is gonna look like if you implement this. Very simple language that we can then go, and I can go, hey, Sharon Patterson, this bill doesn't, you know, do this thing, and it's very simple, because a lot of times do things really on the house floor, right? And so, I would just say very simple, but also, I hate to say this, I mean, oxymoron, can you tell it's simple? That doesn't make sense. Y'all get
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the age of social media and a lot of hot takes online, that aren't really backed up in reality. I think a lot of times people throw around these statements about what something's gonna do or how it's gonna affect them. And that's all well and good, but I've gotta have data, I've gotta have proof of what you're saying is the actual. So that could look like anything from statements to documentation or any of those sorts of things to prove what you're saying. Not that I don't believe you, but I mean, I think you can imagine how many people are coming at us from every different angle on every single one. So if I have proof of something, then I can really push forward. If I don't have proof, I just have an opinion or a hot take, you know, about something. It's hard for me to, quite frankly, take that seriously. And, you know, you guys are the ones that can actually provide us with that. So if you can provide us with that documentation, let us know it's here's how. That helps us.
Love it. Yeah, Lyndon can appreciate that. He's a big data nerd. Numbers don't lie, as we say. Ball don't lie, play basketball. Okay, so we brought together some people who are clearly interested in getting involved, right? Because you show up, you want to work. So from that perspective of getting involved, a lot of people don't know what that means beyond casting a vote, right? So what does meaningful candidate support look like, and how does aligning with the right candidate create real downstream protection for a business owner's liability?
It's probably challenging. That's a really good question, to be honest. I would imagine it's pretty challenging for your everyday Texan to understand all the different elections that we have. We have school board, we have city, we have state, federal, all the like. And you know, the reality is the federal stuff is probably the more sexy stuff. Right? If you go to any cable networks or any kind of news, it's most of the federal stuff. And that's all fine and good. The reality is what we pass impacts you like 10 times. You know, not as sexy as it's fine. But so it's you know, it's one of those things where we appreciate that a lot from now. So you decide that you're going to go, and you have this whole slate of people. Quite frankly, you haven't heard half these people. You don't realize you actually like the judges. I thought judges. So I say all that. It'll take some research on your behalf. But as far as, you know, once you latch on to an individual that aligns with, you know, broadly speaking, what are the different reasons why you would support somebody? The ways that help us just we are very grassroots in our campaigns. So it is wherever you want to help. I mean, you can boldly put a yard sign in your front yard. You can talk to your neighbors. You can knock on doors. You can have coffee. There's just on and on and on different things that, you know, if you really, maybe it's a school board race, maybe it's city council, but that's something that you really believe in. You know, those are really the ways to engage them and help them. And I'm telling you, I wish I could speak for all of us. The very most important thing to us in our election are volunteers. I don't know. I don't care how much money somebody throws at a race. If you don't have volunteers, if you don't have street support, it's just not. You guys, you all are the most important pieces. Uh, and so in that, you're really the ones that impact the elections, which
Well, I was also add that, it's, speaking that I was a small business owner, I know it's really hard to get into like partisan, situations, right? You don't want to put your business in that place. Right? So, look at also the candidates that are endorsed by the business community, that are endorsed by associations that represent your specific industries, right? That would help, small businesses kind of like, well, this is not so these days, right? I'll just speak for a minute. I know how hard it is to say, I'm going to put my yard sign for this Democrat or Republican or whatever, right? So I guess my thing would be introduce candidates that you like, legislators that you like to other business owners, right? We do Small Business Saturday once a month in our district, where I'm constantly looking for small businesses that give back to the community, that enrich our community, that we can honor and we can work together, right? So those types of interesting, unique ways where we're not always putting a party forward, we're putting a policy, or we're putting the people, we're putting an industry forward, I think is the most important. And I think that support spreads. And then we're focusing on specific issues like workers' comp, or we're working on the workforce pipeline, or we're working on whatever. I think that's the most important right now because like my colleagues have said, social media has gotten so ugly. And, Matt, I don't want to be a picture with me anyway. So, I know how hard it is sometimes for a small business. So I kind of get uncomfortable a little bit when I'm like, you have to put like sign on that, right? Because parts always have really become ugly. But we can still support each other by introducing people to our networks and things like that.
Jared, did you want to add anything? Those are good answers. Yeah. Those are good answers. I like the cohesive approach as opposed to polarizing approach that we see on social media. So that's why I love getting together in person. We can actually have this conversation. Awesome. So again, getting into that support aspect, what should a small business owner be looking for when evaluating a candidate for a state office? So beyond party affiliation, as you said, Mihaela, what signals tell you that someone will actually fight for the conditions that allow small businesses to thrive?
yeah, I prefer candidates in pair. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. Look, at the end of the day, don't take anyone else. I'm very proud of my re-election, including all the president, and governor, and so many others. Don't take their word. Seek and find for yourself. And dang sure don't take somebody's word for it that you've never met. And, all it takes is a piece of paper to create one of these political action committees or one of these groups that is, and, for our side, we're conservative patriots fighting on equals. And you should support, Matt Shaheen for state representative. And you're like, hey, that's conservative patriots fighting on equals. That sounds right up my alley, And it's like, that sounds like someone, and you have no idea who this is. You don't know if it's the same person that's behind 12. You're getting texts or mail from 12 different groups. Man, all these groups love or hate this candidate. So they got to be good or bad. Right? And it's the same individual filled out 12 different pieces of paper and have 12 different facts. Right? I hate when people say do your own research, which is, let's be honest, no one's going to do your own research. But get to know, we are all super, and especially during campaign season, especially, we need help. She said, like, we need volunteers, we need help and all that. And we desperately want to know what's going on in the community. We desperately want to know what's going on to businesses, kids' schools, and that sort of thing. And so we want that relationship with
So I think it's incumbent upon every single person in this room and out of the community to form that specific relationship with your elected officials. Because I assure you, if you don't have one, it's your fault. Because we all want it, we all spend a lot of money to try to get it. I mean, a lot of money to try to get it. And it is very, very difficult to get people to put their phones in and to spend 45 minutes at a coffee shop here, let's go, maybe even downtown, and have conversations. It's very, very challenging. But I think that's the most important thing that you can do. And then you can assess whether that candidate is someone that you want to support from your own individual knowledge of knowing who that human being is.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's helpful for us is when groups of like-minded individuals, so in other words, if y'all want to get together, ask for meetings, specific topics that you want to address, maybe we don't talk about here, that's really helpful for us. But it's also helpful for you, right? You can dive into some details and see what kind of line up with respect to the interests of your business and your family and the like. So I think it's something that I would encourage because Jared, right? The social media, the mailers, God bless you all. I don't understand how you can say that. Just FYI, here's some free information for you. We don't read the comments on social media or anything like that. I don't. And so that's probably not the best way to communicate. But seriously though, if you can gather like a handful of individuals and a certain topic that you want to discuss with us, that's a two-way street, right? You're learning whether somebody that you can support or want to support. It's really helpful. I would assume all of us, we have 100% helps if you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. More events like this, anything like this that you guys can do, anything that you guys can get us in front of people. I mean, we love to talk. Anything that you guys can do to just get in front of us, like I said, we're very accessible. Abby's in the audience, send an email to my staff and she won't make my schedule. But I also want to reiterate how quickly the legislative session goes by and how vital it is for you guys to have those meaningful conversations with us one-on-one. My most important piece of legislation that I've ever passed, the most meaningful bill that I ever passed was Edward's law. This bill literally started between me and a conversation between me and a mother who told me her experience in losing her child. And it was such a meaningful conversation that for the next 2.5 years of my life, all I could think about was how to make sure that this never happens. And that was why it was so important for me to make sure I had that one-on-one conversation with Jared about Everybody's Law, which I remember we had, and Chairman Shaheen about Everybody's Law and why it was so important. That conversation created the golden national standard for perinatal bereavement care in the state of Texas. Now leading the way for neonatal loss and how parents are going to deal with trauma. Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia have all contacted us because they want to replicate that. It started from a simple conversation I had with a constituent, and you guys can be the next.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, I think that's a really good point. Roughly half the bills that I've had every session are ideas that came from my constituents, from someone that looked at me in my office, made an appointment, came and talked to me about an issue that they had. We figured out how to address it to some degree, if not all the way. And then we passed a piece of legislation. And those are all laws on the books in Texas that I wouldn't have known to file if not for being a constituent. So I think I just can't tell you how. If you're having an issue, especially with and we don't know about it, we want to do those things. We want the economy coming. We don't want anything to slow you down as an entrepreneur as a small business. We want our schools to be in the best possible position they can to succeed. We want parents empowered to make the right choices for their children. But that looks different for every person. So if you have an issue with hiccup, we need to know about it. If we can maybe, pass this solution.
Okay, so this will be my last question, then we're gonna open it up for audience Q&A. But you guys are talking about making a difference, bringing things to you guys. So let's look kind of in the crystal ball and look forward, right? And what we're trying to do here, the BDA believes that civic engagement is a core competency of business ownership, not just a civic duty. If 100,000 organized, formed, small business owners showed up as a unified force in Texas elections, how would that change the way that Austin operates? And what would you want a coalition to prioritize? We're looking future here. What do you got?
Well, I can't speak for 100,000 people and their number one priority, but I think that right now, what I'm hearing a lot from my small business communities is childcare. The cost of childcare, the acceptability, quality of childcare. We have a lot of work that we need to do in our state. There's a lot of conversation around childcare right now nationally, and I think that Texas could lead the way. Look, if parents can't access childcare, they're not going to access it, right? That means that one of us is staying home, and it ain't going to be me, okay? So it's really a really important issue that I think we're not really addressing in the legislature. I would see more action around helping parents get access to good quality childcare.
I would refer back to what I said earlier, that we want you to succeed, we want our small businesses to succeed. So I think the more that you can line up and an organization or just a small businesses, however you want to define that, the handful of items that you can be focused on and you come down to Austin or have individual meetings. So let me give you like a really quick. It is, the governor right now is talking a lot about, well, everybody wants to talk about tax. Question is, how do you do that? I will tell you that we've been working on compressing your school property taxes, rate lowers. And then so what we do is we send more of the revenue that the state generates through sales taxes to your schools. And so we're able to do that transition to lower your property taxes. That costs in our budget $51 billion. If you have looked at the state budget, by far the largest line item in the budget of education, it's literally over $100 billion. We educate about 5.5 million children. Literally $100 billion in the budget. And we're still, but it's the number one complaint. And so it's actually pretty dang complex, obviously, but how we end up doing that might impact your small business, right? Not just going to rate. But anyhow, all that to say is how that actually gets implemented. In small business was to come down to the Capitol or engage the governor's office, each of us individually goes to the Senate. On what your perspective is, you essentially have a seat at the table. And again, it's a very complex situation, complex approach to it.
Yeah, Representative Shaheen, I think makes a great point there that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on. That's the old saying, right? We don't know, and we don't hear from you, then odds are there's someone else out there advocating for a position that might be in direct opposition to what's in your best interest. There are people advocating across every single industry in the state of Texas. And, they're all advocating for the position. If you're not there, then your position specifically isn't being advocated. Now we can advocate on your behalf. That's part of our job. If we don't know, if we don't hear from you, we don't know what your position is. So I think that groups like this are important. I think that if you organize and have, especially if they're broad, 3 to 5 bullet points of small businesses we can get behind, that's great. And if you got 100,000 people and we'll shut up the Capitol with 45 votes, that's huge. And maybe we can get all of them. Maybe we get one. Maybe we just make progress. There was a bill that I passed session, that I worked on 3 sessions to get done. It took me 3 sessions to get this bill passed, but we finally got it done. So sometimes it takes time. But yeah, I mean, I think being organized, having a clear cut, that are good for you to represent. That would be great.
All right, you mentioned seat at the table. You guys are all out in the audience. You have a seat at this table. What's the saying? You're not on the menu. It's close. I like that saying. Okay, so I'm opening up to the audience. Who has a question for state representatives? Yes, Debbie.
Well, you know, one that we just passed last session, that you all voted on, was this small business tax exemption. You know, small businesses were able to get a $2,500 tax exemption, which is almost that. That's a few state versus chairs. $2,500 exemption, and we raised that, I think, 250,000, I want to say. So now there's a massive new exemption on the books for small businesses. They don't pay property taxes for that. This is personal property. Yeah. I know, right? But that, you know, that's one that's just passed. And, you know, once we get through the primary, mentioned earlier, you know, we're gonna have charges and all that. We'll kind of see what happens. I can say that what I believe two of the biggest topics to talk about next session and deal with is water. And I'm talking about funding that infrastructure specifically, how to fund the infrastructure. We did a lot of water last session. I think we're gonna do a lot more on water this next session. And I also think the transportation infrastructure is gonna be a major topic in this next session. Those aren't the next biggest topics, but those are you're gonna see on the mailers, you know, to get people who are the most motivated to get out. But, you know, at the end of the day, when the campaigns are over, somebody has to come. And those are the non-second water roads that we're going to be on.
Yes, sir.
And then if property tax increase, how
So, it's a totally separate, so there's zero impact to our public schools. We increased funding for schools by $8.5 billion just this last session, and half of that goes to our teachers. Teachers we had a separate fund, if you will, another for the school choice ESA. So mom and dad can open up an ESA and they can make an application. A lot of there's prioritization as far as income level, specialty. You do an application so that you get the ESA dollars and you go shop for school meets the needs of your child. So zero impact. I think we fund schools sufficiently in the state of Texas. Some people that agree with that. But in the time that I've been in office, we literally increased education funding by approaching 40 billion. And so I struggle a little bit when we have football stadiums that are $70 million or indoor football stadium, and we have schools that cost, you know, a couple $100 million to build, and I know that's dead. I struggle a little bit then to turn around and say, schools sufficiently, we are. So if your child goes to a public school like Frisco, Prosper, Plano, whatever, these are some of the best schools in the nation. They just are. And your child is going to be ready for the military, for the We have our graduation rates are sometimes 99%. So if you're in this area, your child's going to be fine. The problem that we have is if you're in some urban areas, or if you're in some low income areas, you're not going to the greatest schools. And I'm of the opinion we could quadruple education funding. It's not going to address the problem. The whole economic complex. I will look you in the eye and tell you that we sufficiently fund education in the state of Texas. That's why we ask for choice, is so that those children, don't have to go to a school that doesn't meet the needs of that child. Maybe your child's dyslexic, maybe your child's special needs, but mom and dad are willing, and nobody loves that child. Mom and dad are going to make the best decision for that child. And if we can give that child an opportunity to go to a school that quite frankly isn't in a crime-ridden neighborhood or doesn't have a drug problem, I don't know what. I will tell you this. That school choice bill that passed the legislature is going to literally change the projection of tens of thousands of students. And quite frankly, would have gone into our criminal justice system. Instead, they're going to go to college and they're going to be great engineers or accountants. That school choice legislation is a game changer for tens of thousands of students.
Okay, last question, real quick. Okay.
Big city tax, other than school voucher, something kind of breaks through on social media. Say, one of the biggest frustrations for national office. Say, oh yeah, go against it or but go through our workers. Are y'all usually single issue bills in Texas at the local level, or single, or are they packaged in a lot of waste of time?
So we are single issue bills, and it's actually, if you have more than one subject, then it's, you can call it.
Yeah, that's called the two subject rule. So, yeah, we can't do it all. We can't do that. We do that ever so often. Age range changes into a whole entire section of code. But what it can't do is be a bill about water and also be about, like it can't cross those types of issues. But our rules are very, very tight. As you can imagine, 150 different members, they all have the ability to put amendments on bills. Every member has a right to put an amendment to the system, put that amendment on the bill they choose. And so our rules are extremely limited to be able to do that. Let me also just say that the fact that Congress does get all the headlines and all that stuff, and they have created such a god-awful of how to be legislators and how to be statesmen, they do nothing. And I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans. I'm talking about every single one. I wouldn't give 2 cents for any of them because they're worthless. They do nothing. I tell my people, when I meet them, I'm like, tell me the 3 most conservative Republicans. Tell me the 3 most conservative bills that Congress has passed in the last 30 years. I'll give you 30 years. Tell me the 3 most conservative bills that they passed. And they can't tell you one. They might remember the big beautiful bill because it was marketed so well. But like but I can't. I didn't but they can't because Congress doesn't do anything. They've advocated their entire existence to the executive. And I'm a big fan of the president. I voted for him. I love his policy. But regardless of who the president is, Congress is supposed to be a separate but equal branch of government. And right now, and it's all pretty much my entire government, they did completely.
Even Trump can't do anything when he needed 5 more seats to get in the Texas legislature.
Well, that's kind of different. But I guess here's my point. I guess my point is that your Texas, we actually passed policy. We're actually attempting to make lives better for people. We're putting $51 billion towards property tax relief. That's more dollars than any other state ever has. That's a higher percentage of the budget than any state has ever. in terms of property tax rate. We're so successful in the state of Texas. We're eliminating taxes that don't even exist. We banned state income tax, we banned securities exchange, we banned death tax. Those taxes don't exist. But we're making sure that they don't ever exist in the future. We're putting in the state's constitution to make sure that they're in the future. We're funding education, $8.5 billion in increase in the last year. $5,000 teacher pay raises at least in rural districts. We're doing all of these things, billions of dollars in water infrastructure, billions of dollars in transportation infrastructure, largely on the backs of the industry. We're doing all of these things as state legislators. Congress, you can't name 3 things that they've ever done for you that's made your life better. You just can't. I challenge every group I'm with to tell me 3 things that they've done. You know, there were some things in the 60s and, you know, this and that. And like, in my lifetime, Congress hasn't done anything wrong. And so I think that's the big difference is that you've got a lot of rock stars in the Texas House and the Texas Senate that are there for the right reasons, that are there for a while, and they go back to work, and we work under the same laws that we pass. And I think, again, as Representative Shaheen said, that's the secret sauce of Texas. We get out of the way so that you all can go do your thing and thrive and grow businesses and create wealth for people and all of those things. It is truly a blessing to be here. Thank you for that question.
All right, with that, guys, we are out of time. Believe it or not, time flies when you're having fun, right? There were no fights up here, so that was great.
The Community Difference, North Texas, is made possible by the Business Development Alliance and our premier sponsors, Texas Edge Insurance, PGA of America, NAC Theater, Riker Home Services, No Sweat Experts, and Real Property Management Focus. And by Abracadabra, Best Buddies International, Farmers Insurance, K9 Resorts, My Live Love Travel, and the Compound Nevada. The Community Difference, North Texas, powered by the Business Development Alliance. Together, we can make the difference.